1899. Not the next Yellowstone spinoff, but an important year nonetheless. After all, 1899 was when voting machines were first approved by the U.S. Congress for use in federal elections. It's when the University of Kansas's first basketball team, coached by game inventor James Naismith, was actually defeated by a YMCA team from Kansas City 16-5. It was the year Al Capone and Duke Ellington were born. And it was when the first car driven in Texas made the 5-hour trip from Dallas to Terrell at a speed of 6 miles per hour, almost doubling the average speed of walking. As significant as those events perhaps were, we're here today to actually celebrate another big event in 1899, the establishment of an organized Department of Public Speaking here at UT Austin. I'm Craig Scott. I'm the Department Chair of Communication Studies, which is the current day version of that unit established 125 years ago. And it really is my pleasure to welcome you back and welcome you here as we kick off this 125th celebration. Now, folks, we're going to be hearing a bit later about some of the history of the department, but I think it's important today that we mark this year as our Quasquicentennial. Quasquicentennial is kind of a fun word. It refers to 125th anniversary. Interestingly, and I hope our rhetorical colleagues appreciate this, the word itself only dates back to 1961, meaning it won't celebrate its Quasquicentennial for another 60 or so years. We, however, are celebrating ours today. So, to help kick us off, I'm pleased to introduce someone with almost 125 different titles right now. She is Distinguished Scholar of the National Communication Association, Fellow of both the International Communication Association and the International Association for Relationship Research, the Walter Cronkite Regents Chair, and the Jesse H. Jones Centennial Chair in Communication, Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Graduate Education, and our interim dean here at the Moody College of Communication. But most important, she is a beloved colleague and professor right here in the Department of Communication Studies. So please help me welcome Dr. Anita Evangelisti.
Thank you. I thought Craig was going to say I was 125 years old, and there was going to be a problem at that point. Thank you for the generous introduction, and thank you even more, Craig, for your outstanding service as chair of the Department of Communication Studies. The guidance you've provided has helped grow the department into the exceptional program that it is today. It's great to see so many familiar faces here and so many faces that have been an important part of this community. Maybe not since 1899, but for a very long time. I'm proud to be part of the Department of Communication Studies and honored to call the department my academic home. When I first moved to Austin, I was surprised that there were only 2 places to get espresso. One was Dr. Quackenbush's, which was on Guadalupe. I see some familiar nods. It was a wonderful place, still is, but has moved. And they dropped the doctor for some reason. The other one was Texas French Bread, and there was only 1 location. The coffee was not quite as good as Quackenbush's, but doable. But this is a little disturbing for someone who was from Seattle. I also was substantially concerned that the university endorsed bringing a live cow to sporting events and many fancy social events. Now you can get coffee everywhere you turn in Austin. And another change that I have to confess to is I've become one of the many people who smiles and feels warmth in my heart whenever I get to see Bevo. It's been exciting to witness firsthand the college's and the department's evolution over the past years. I never would have predicted some of the changes that we've all seen. Things like in our communication field, the degree to which technological advances have encouraged students to adapt and take on new skills far beyond the oratory traditions that we had back in 1899. Today, our students explore things like the impact of social media, digital communication, virtual work, and artificial intelligence on our societies and our relationships, our politics. Our students also develop expertise in critical areas like environmental, political, relational, and global communication. Our department's continual efforts to remain at the forefront of communication changes is one of the many reasons that we enjoy the prominence we do today. We're well regarded as one of the top programs in communication in the world and widely viewed as one of the best, if not the best program for doctoral student placement. We have highly published faculty who have been leaders and major award winners both in the National Communication Association and in the International Communication. And we're home to a speech and debate program that have been national champions too many times to count. At the same time as we change, our students still discover the fundamentals of our discipline, the importance of things like speaking well, forming and maintaining relationships, and understanding organizational life. And these things continue to matter so much both to individuals' personal and their professional lives. As part of our continual evolution, just this past year, we were able to expand our academic offerings by adding 2 new tracks to our undergraduate curriculum: strategic and risk communication, and global and intercultural communication. And both of these will prepare our students to explore new career pathways that they haven't explored before. Under Craig's leadership and with the direction of our expert faculty and the exceptionalism of our students, I know we'll enjoy even greater successes in the future. The Communication Studies Department, known when it was founded as the Department of Public Speaking, is the oldest part of this college. It was one of the key departments involved in creating the College of Communication. And so celebrating the 125 years of this department is also celebrating the 125 years of the whole college. We are the foundation of the department. Thank you very much. It makes me especially proud and want to thank all of you for being here to celebrate this milestone. I'm also excited to join you in learning more about our department's history in just a few minutes in the upcoming historical section. And then the important part, which is after that, we get to go out and have cake and ice cream on the lawn in the front. So stick around because we have an incredible day planned for you, thanks to Craig and Jennifer and everybody in the main office that did all the plannings for this. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Jay Bernhardt, president of Emerson College in Boston, former dean of Moody College, and from 2014 through 2023, a proud member of the Faculty of Communication Studies. It was really always wonderful being a member of the faculty in the department, a great group of scholars and leaders and visionaries, teachers, authors, and just a really amazing group of talented people I was very proud to be part of and continue to be impressed with the amazing work that you all do. I just wanted to take a moment to record a video to say congratulations on the major milestone of 125 years. Quasquicentennial, I think is the word that Craig put in the email to me. That's amazing. Again, I wish you all the very best. I miss you all. Hope you're doing well. And hope to see you all sometime soon. Thanks and congratulations.
I'm Ellen Wartella, and I was Dean of the College of Communication at UT Austin between 1993 and 2004. Indeed, it was a great privilege. And during that time, I had the opportunity to know a lot of people in communication studies, which is a storied and very much a leadership department in the field of communication. Indeed, the Department of Communication Studies at UT has produced a number of presidents of our academic fields, in fact, 3 in the National Communication Association, and Mark Knapp, who was president there, was also president of the International Communication Association. It's quite clear that the kind of leadership role that this department has served for 125 years, which is a remarkable accomplishment, is one that we need to celebrate. So it's my great privilege and pleasure to say congratulations to the Department of Communication Studies at UT Austin.
My name's Pat Witherspoon, and I was on the Comm Studies faculty from 1985 to 2000. I was Associate Dean for a time and then Chair from 1996 to 2000. I even remember when we moved into the new communication building. I was just starting my PhD studies at that time. One thing that hasn't changed at UT Austin in communication studies is the quality of the faculty, the staff, and the students. So congratulations on the anniversary. Not for lasting 125 years, but for what you've done and accomplished during that time. Congratulations.
My name is Rick Churwitz, and I was a faculty member in the department from 1978 until I retired in 2019. One of the wonderful things about being a faculty member at Texas is that I got to be part of a program and help build a program in rhetoric that was one of the top 3 in the country. The memory that I think about more than anything else is when the new Dean of Liberal Arts called me to say he was renovating their building and wanted to have his people send over the speech sign which sat outside the building. He did that, and I featured it proudly in my office until I retired.
Greetings, Communication Studies. I'm Mark Bernstein. I came to UT Austin to join the Speech Communication Department as an assistant professor in communication disorders back in 1982. The 2 divisions of the department eventually, of course, became 2 separate departments, and I remember so fondly through the years having wonderful conversations, learning so much from my colleagues and friends in communication studies. I want to congratulate you for the many, many decades of good work that you've done. You've earned the wonderful reputation you have, and I hope there are many, many more to come. Congratulations. It's a great celebration. Enjoy.
Hey, Lily's got the barn cat under her arm, got the dishpan over her head. Uncle Bud's counting kids, 8, 9, 10. Had to get another loaf of bread. Tornado time in Texas, knock the paint right off of your barn. Tornado time in Texas, blow the tattoo off of your arm. Blow the tattoo off of your arm.
I'm Lori Lewis, and I was on faculty at UT Austin from 1997 to 2006. It was when I was a young assistant professor and learning the ropes of how to be on faculty and how to teach and do my scholarship and balance my work life and all those things. It was a wonderful experience, and I was so blessed to be there at a time with so many talented students and faculty colleagues and wonderful staff. One of my best memories of that time was being in the sort of informal group of assistant professors, and we would get together occasionally and have lunch or a drink or something and just share our lives and how we were coping as young assistant professors in this new discipline. Congratulations, UT Austin, 125 years. Wow, that's amazing.
Greetings. My name is Patricia Parker, and I was a doctoral student in the Department of Communication Studies from 1990 to 1996. I am now the Rule W. Tyson Distinguished Professor of Humanities and Director of the Institute for the Arts and Humanities at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I've been on faculty here since 1998. Earning my doctorate at the University of Texas at Austin opened many doors for me, but it was the educational experience that I gained through the careful guidance of my professors in the Department of Communication and the vibrant intellectual community that was created there that helped me, that prepared me to excel once I walked through those doors. I am thrilled to have this opportunity to express my gratitude for that wonderful educational experience and to congratulate the Department of Communication Studies on its 125th anniversary.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Beasley, and I am a proud graduate of the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Texas at Austin, where I received both my master's degree and my PhD. I'm currently serving as the president of Trinity University in San Antonio, right down the road. Before that, I served for more than 2 decades in various academic and leadership positions in higher education. From that perspective, I can attest that both the rigor and the insights that I gained from the Communication Studies Department helped me to become the leader I am today. It's also the place where I learned that my questions matter. Congratulations, Communication Studies, on 125 years, and here's to 125 more.
Happy 125th. I'm Rachel Mercy, Interim Executive Vice President and Provost here at UT Austin. Of course, before stepping into this role, I had the honor of serving on the faculty and as the Dean of the Moody College of Communication. I want to offer my heartfelt congratulations to the staff and faculty on the 125th anniversary of the Department of Communication Studies, the very foundation upon which the Moody College of Communication was built. Back in 1899, when the Department of Communication Studies was established, the field looked quite different. Even so, the department's relentless pursuit of excellence has remained. To this day, Communication Studies continues to provide undergraduate and graduate students with amazing learning opportunities to produce high-impact research, to attract world-renowned faculty, and perhaps most importantly, to prepare students for successful, impactful careers in industry, government, and education. During my tenure as Dean, I had the privilege of working with the Communication Studies community. I witnessed firsthand the immense pride and enthusiasm that everyone in the college has for this department. I am truly honored for the opportunity to celebrate this historic milestone with all of you. Congratulations once again on this remarkable achievement. Hook 'em.
Anita, I want to thank you for your wonderful comments, and I hope you all enjoyed hearing from some of the many people who aren't a formal part of our festivities today, but who've been important parts of our department over the past several decades. Another key group of individuals in our history are, of course, our alums. And when we asked the development office for a list of alums, we were stunned to get a spreadsheet back with over 11,000 names on it. So it was a sizable number of people. We don't have quite 11,000 here today, but we are thrilled at all those who have come back to kind of be part of this. And I'd like to quickly recognize some of the alums today. So if you would kind of stand up when I call your group, that would be great. Could the alums from the 2010s and 2020s please stand up? Any alums from the 2010s and 2020s? Thank you for being here. How about alums from the decade starting with 2000? So in the 2000s. Okay, we've got a few people there. Good. Great. Nice to have you here. Any 1990s alums? All right, good. Great to have you here as well. I think we might have a handful from the 1980s. Any from the 1980s? Okay, great. Amazing, thank you. And I believe we at least have one from the 1970s or earlier, if you would stand. All right. It's so great to have you here. I also want to recognize, we didn't formally calculate this, but I'm pretty sure I'm safe in saying the alum who has probably traveled the furthest for this. I'd like to recognize Peter Chen, who came here all the way from Taiwan. So. Before I introduce our main speakers for this session, obviously we want to celebrate our 125 years of excellence by trying to help set up the department for the next 125 years also, or at least the next couple years. So we've actually kind of set up a fundraising goal where we're trying to get 125 plus gifts of $125 plus. And so if you'd like to be part of that, you could either scan this code or you could do the code that's on the pull-up banner there, and both of those will kind of take you to the anniversary page and the giving link that is on that. We'd love for any contributions that you might feel like making, and for any of those who make $125 or more, we'll have you listed on a permanent plaque that we'll be keeping in the department. So thank you in advance for any support that you can provide for this. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce two of my amazing colleagues in the department who have also taken on the roles of department historian and department archivist. Dr. Josh Gunn is a leading expert in rhetorical studies and has been on faculty here for nearly 20 years. He's the author of multiple books, including his most recent, titled Political Perversion, Rhetorical Aberration in the Time of Trumpeteering. Joining him is Dr. Joanna Hartelius, who received her MA and PhD from our program, and then later in her career returned to join us on the faculty. She too is an award-winning author, and her most recent book is The Gifting Logos, Expertise in the Digital Commons. Josh and Joanna, take us back and take us away.
Well, hello. This portrait is one of the first things I remember when beginning here in 2005. It used to hang somewhat mysteriously in our old conference room, which, believe it or not, is what now is Jennifer's office. You can imagine how hard it was to squeeze a doctoral seminar in there. It was tight, and if you didn't bathe, it was insufferable. I remember this portrait because, if I recall correctly, one or both of Jennifer's kids gave Schroeder a crown, a gaudy necklace, and a mustache made out of Post-it notes, and declared it was Professor Gunn. It's actually our first chairman, of course, Edwin Du Bois Schroeder. When it was announced the department would be getting rid of the painting, I protested. No, it's part of our history. I'll take it and put it in my office with the Post-it notes. Chairman Brumman agreed that the department should protect this treasure, and so for my part, I started diving into the archives to find out what I could about this man and our department. And I started this process over 15 years ago. Now, Joanna and I have been back to the archives recently and hope to share with you some things that we discovered. And I can tell you this off the bat. The Schroeders would be very proud, very, very proud that we still have this portrait. It was commissioned by Alice Schroeder after Eddie's death to be gifted to the department in his memory. In her older age, the painting would become something of a life goal for Alice. In her correspondence, she was absolutely in what I would call soft frenzy about having it made, and with the help of another former student, Arthur Hayes, finally secured Robert Childress of Jacksonville, Texas, to paint it. And it was like $1,000, something like that. Why was Ms. Schroeder so desperate to have this portrait donated to the department? Well, it has something to do with the University Interscholastic League. And I'll tell you, but first we have to get a sense of the history of the university itself, and that begins with the land grant of 1862. But first, a quick preliminary. Despite what the Texas legislature would have us believe, the University of Texas, like most public universities, stands on indigenous land, violently taken by many tribes, taken from many tribes by non-indigenous settlers. Most of the tribes in Texas were nomadic, but the Tonkawa were less so and settled here and near Round Rock and also in Oklahoma. I mention the removal and genocide of indigenous peoples not simply to acknowledge the historical theft, but also to explain why I often have a bit of a slip of the tongue, a Freudian slip, if you will, when I say land grant, because I always want to say land grab. In any event, our university was established as a consequence of the Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862, which had everything to do with the Civil War. Before the war, a professor from Illinois College was calling for a federally funded school or schools to teach agriculture, and various bills to this effect were offered but failed in Congress. Justin Morrill, then a Republican House representative and later a senator from Vermont, had a bright idea. Let's add military science to this bill. Doing so, the act passed because, the Union was fighting the expansion of slavery in the West. So this worked. Lincoln signed the act into law before the Civil War would conclude, granting roughly 17 million acres of federal land, again taken, in 17 million acres was given to various states to build a public university, which is, of course, if not the signature event of Reconstruction. The Land Grant, Land Grab Act was dedicated to moral uplift and the social mobility of the quote-unquote industrial classes. Now, the state of Texas applied for land after it rejoined the Union in 1870, and this was how Texas A&M University was born, built in the Brazos Valley because of its more fertile soil. Building A&M then allowed Texas to apply for more funding to build what became the University of Texas at Austin, which opened to a gathering on what is now the Quad in September of 1883. The university would begin construction of its first major building in 1884, which is known as Old Main, and it opened in 1899, the same year the department began. Later, the department would move to what is now the Gebauer Building, which was referred to at one time as the Speech Building, outside of which stood this lovely sign that Rick saved, and that is stored in my office, but it belongs to the department. Sadly, the beautiful Gothic Old Main was razed in 1936 and 37 to make way for 2 turntables and a microphone, or what we call the Tower. Many of you may be surprised that the reason for our existence has to do with the formation of our debate and forensics program in 1883, so it predates Mr. Schroeder. Back then, debate teams were more like fraternities that orbited universities, not officially a part of the university, but often celebrated as such. Established as the Athenaeum Literary Society, the team's biggest rival was, anyone? Baylor. The story goes that, remember, we're still having trouble getting around at that time. So the story goes that at a debate competition on our campus, sometime around 1897 or 1898, I couldn't confirm that, the Athenae lost badly to Baylor, embarrassingly so. So much so that the university's first president vowed the team would never lose to Baylor again. According to Alice Schroeder's correspondence, the story goes like this. She and Edwin were dining in Ithaca as Schroeder was teaching again at Cornell. As they ate, a strange man kept staring at them. Finally, President Winston approached the table and asked if they were the Schroeders. Eddie said they were. Schroeder had already accepted a new position at Ohio State, but Winston persuaded him to come to Texas anyway, with the express purpose of coaching the debate team with other classes on the side. And so it was. Schroeder became the one-man Department of Public Speaking, originally housed in Old Main, before it moved to the Speech Building, and the evidence suggests that ours actually is the first Department of Public Speaking in the country. Following countrywide trends, the department would change its name a few times. Schroeder transitioned to the Department of Speech about 1920, as most departments in oratory did in the 1920s. And long after Schroeder was dead, we become Speech Communication and Communication Studies, and I'll put that on another slide, about which more shortly. But who is this guy, and why did Winston insist on hiring him? Well, Schroeder was a graduate of Cornell University and known to be a very talented speaker. So impressive was his speaking that he was elected class president of his freshman class. After he graduated from Cornell, he moved to Stanford to teach public speaking as an instructor, and then having met Alice, married and came back to Ithaca to teach speaking, or actually elocution as it was called then, until Winston wooed him to Los Angeles. Schroeder made a name for himself, however, because of his textbooks. He wrote dozens of them. Oops, wrong direction. There we go. Nope. He wrote dozens of them. There's one. No, it's not obeying. He wrote dozens of them on public speaking and debate, as well as sort of readers for the performance of literature, which became performance studies later on in the 20th century, and then also dozens of collections of speeches for study. This was significant for public institutions of higher learning because of the new student created by the Land-Grant-Land-Grab Act. Before the public university, there were really only private schools, and many of them were religious. The industrial classes were not ready to read college-level textbooks, as more elite students could do. So there was a huge need for more accessible textbooks. And this is where Schroeder made his coin. It was because of his textbooks that Winston actually found him and tried to hire him. And it was because of these textbooks that the field of speech came into being. The textbooks came before any national organization. That is to say, the textbooks created what became the field of speech. When he arrived at UT, Schroeder was also asked to run the extension program, which he did. Schroeder's work with extension and the non-traditional student inspired the idea for what he called the Interscholastic League of America, a program that would bring public speaking and debate to high schools. And for those of you that have worked in or work at UTNIF, this is an echo, actually, of this program. The ILA was basically an organization that helped run various contests, debate and public speaking, of course, but also athletics. And eventually, these would merge. They changed the name to University Interscholastic League, and athletics and debate would be combined, and then they would add marching band competitions. So Schroeder started this org in 1910, and more than the department or extension, this was his true devotion and love. In other words, he loved the UIL more than he loved our department. It is now the University Scholastic League, and he believed, as did many of his colleagues in the speech sciences, that his mission was to mold children into better, more informed citizens capable of deliberation. The organization eventually evolved into what was called the Americanization movement, a broad national, if not nativist, attempt to secure full-throated patriots. Schroeder took this to great lengths through high school athletics and debate contests. Perusing the UIL website and even Wikipedia, you'll notice something is missing: a history of the organization. While it is the largest of its kind in the world, Schroeder has been effectively erased from its official history. But why? And that brings me to the controversy. So the controversy. When I first started looking into Schroeder's background, I ran across a dissertation by the speech department graduate Arthur Hayes. Hayes' dissertation was about the legacy of Schroeder, particularly his teaching in public high schools, and the UIL. And the UIL was pretty much a revolutionary intervention in public education with public speaking and debate. I mean, it was a new thing, and by all accounts, but especially Cohen, who wrote the first history of SpeechCom, he was a visionary. He saw what was going to happen before something like NCA could happen. In the preface to the dissertation, Hayes says, out of respect to Alice, his dissertation will not examine the controversy. So I'm sitting in the archive going, ooh, what is that? So it's taken 15 years to sort of get to the bottom of this. Alas, I still haven't found all the details that we need to assess why Schroeder was run out of the university in 1922, but he was. Here are the details that we have. The department and UIL were running quite smoothly, and speech classes were in relatively high demand. University presidents Prather, Houston, and Mises were all very supportive of Schroeder's activities, which had a good reputation, right, that UT was out in the community working in high schools. And of course, as with most land grab institutions, the whole point is to serve the community, right? So that's written in the UT's constitution. In 1916, a well-known figure in the university community, Robert Vinson, was hired as president of UT. Now, Vinson was at that time working at the presbytery here on 27th Street, and he was trained more for the pulpit than he was university presidency. But Vinson would steer UT through its first major crisis in the 1910s, which was a fight with Governor Ferguson, who tried to shut down the university. He was, and Ferguson was impeached for this, actually, and that's how his wife, Ma Ferguson, became governor, and so on and so forth. But Vinson helped save the university in a sense. And of course, there are some ominous parallels to what's happening today. Vinson even judged debates for Schroeder from time to time. Schroeder was also a Presbyterian. He's also a Freemason. I won't go into that. And he was understood as to be a friend. Significant for this time is the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, our second most racist president. A statue of Wilson used to stand on the quad left of George Washington, which was in honor of George Littlefield, a rich, wealthy regent. He was in the Confederate. That's a history for another time, but there's a history about the quad to be said. Ask me at ice cream. Now, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia was in 1917, and ripples of the fear of communism would lead to the first Red Scare, something that Wilson inflamed to support the United States entering the First World War. During this time, efforts at inflaming patriotism and nativism were almost overwhelming. It was everywhere, and public higher education was heavily involved with this effort, as was Schroeder. And so the UIL, which was in many high schools during this period, got sucked into basically the US propaganda machine. Everyone was reading John Dewey also, who also spoke at UT around this time period, and Sigmund Freud, such that notions of social adjustment and mental health became synonymous with patriotism, almost leading eventually in our field to something called the speech hygiene movement, about which more later. In any event, apparently Vinson received 2 anonymous letters complaining about how Schroeder was running the UIL. Vinson had meetings with Schroeder during which he asked questions like, quote, "Are you planning on buying property in Texas?" Around this time, Schroeder was also trying to get the American Citizenship League off the ground, a sort of umbrella organization devoted to Americanization under which the UIL would figure. To this end, Schroeder even wrote an additional Pledge of Allegiance he wanted said in schools, in which he sent to the War Department. I found a copy of it. It's what you would imagine. In any event, in the spring semester of 1922, Schroeder received a letter directly from the regents that said he was no longer to administer anything, and he would be confined to teaching alone. The following September, Schroeder asked for a leave of absence to work on the charter of the American Citizenship League while teaching at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. He never returned to UT. A year later, Alice joined him from Austin. She said that he was heartbroken, even despondent, and having lost the UIL, not so much the department, she said he left because of a series of, quote, petty persecutions and, quote, an undercurrent of hostility from the Vinson administration. It is at this point that we need some audience participation, what I call a think, pair, share. So I'm going to ask you a question, think about it, turn to your neighbor, right, discuss, and then we'll come back as a group and share. So, can you solve the mystery? Why do you think Schroeder was fired or run off? And you have the length of this song to talk and discuss amongst yourselves. Yeah, the song's longer, but I don't want to run over time. Any thoughts? We know there's some jealousy about UIL. We know that there's World War I and Wilson, the Red Scare.
Anything to do with religion?
I'm not sure. They were both Presbyterians, so, you know, All Saints over here. Oh, it's Episcopal. No, the Presbyterian across the street. Yes?
Do you get caught up in the Red Scare, maybe partially because he was breathing?
I don't know the answer to that either. I could find nothing about his Masonic records. All I know is he was a 32nd degree at Scottish Rite, and he was probably a member of my lodge, which is in the Opera House, which unfortunately they're going to have to sell. But anyway, other thoughts? Well, I don't know. This is your challenge. There's a bunch of people that you can go research in the archive. I can only do so much because I'm allergic. So I start sneezing, but we're getting closer to the 1950s, as you can tell. So to keep us in time, I'm not going to have enough time to sort of go through all of this stuff, but obviously, after Schroeder leaves, the department endures. It becomes much more involved in what became the Speech Association of America. It was first the National Association of the Academic Teachers of Public Speaking. That says inferiority, if anything, right? But we went to the Speech Association of America, and that was formed roughly after 17 folks walked out of the Palmer House during a meeting of the National Council of Teachers of English. A couple of our faculty were participating in this. We're not part of the 17, at least to my knowledge, except maybe Lions. And in 1917, of course, they decided to form, they had to have a national organ, so they became up with the Quarterly Journal of Public Speaking, later Quarterly Journal of Speech. In the 1920s, roughly, everyone's doing what I call method wars. Are we humanities? Because Schroeder came out of Cornell, so he's from the humanities tradition. Or are we social sciences out of psychology, like Charles Wilbert was sort of advocating that we be a social science. And then by the end of the 20s, people just said, we're going to do both. So if you wonder why all us weirdos are in the same room and do different methods, it's because our forebears in the 1920s decided this is what we needed to do. And in fact, if we skip up 1930s speech hygiene, I'll tell you about that later. If we skip up to the 1960s, because in the 40s we have World War, everyone's concerned with that. There's the monster study at Iowa, which scares people off of that. And I'll tell you what the monster study is later. Model Madness in the 1950s starts with the MMPI, which was released in 1943, but everyone in comm is doing models. We get the Shannon Weaver model of communication, all this sort of stuff. But the 1960s, there's a strong push to change our name to communication. And so the Department of Education held a conference in New Orleans where everyone came and decided what we were going to call the national organization. They settled on speech communication, speech referencing the humanities, communication referencing the social sciences. The big debate was on Friday of the conference, Friday afternoon, where they debated whether or not to hyphen speech communication. Because a hyphen would sort of signify the equality of the humanities and social sciences. And my advisor, Robert L. Scott, had a sticker on his door that said, I honk for hyphens. I never knew what that meant until I learned about what this story is. Anyway, they pushed for speech communication, but we're going to go back to the 50s, and that's where my colleague is going to pick up. But we're in the 50s, so. Tastes like water.
No, it doesn't. Quote, in an increasingly crowded and complex world, communication plays many roles. Accurate communication from person to person or individual to public is essential to understanding, and understanding is basic to intelligent agreement or disagreement. Thus, communication in society functions like a lubricant in a complicated machine, enabling its many moving parts to operate without grinding into futility. The swift exchange of information permits business to grow, stimulates public taste, brings about change, as well as helping individuals and institutions adapt to change, decreasing the time lag between discovery of new knowledge,
by scientist, scholar, or industrial experimenter, and the comprehension of this knowledge by large segments of the public counteracts inertia and spreads the benefits of such discoveries. Communication makes possible the marshaling of public opinion and increases the effectiveness of forces for political progress. As much as this sounds like an op-ed authored by Professor Emeritus Richard Cherwitz, it is actually the statement of purpose in the catalog of the University of Texas School of Communication for its inaugural academic year, 1965. The enrollment for that fall semester was 2,634 students. The annual budget was $483,212. Rewind the tape. Yes, the tape. To 1958. In June, DeWitt Reddick, who was the director of the School of Journalism, then in the College of Arts and Sciences, wrote a letter to Alton Burdine, the Dean of Arts and Sciences. This letter is the earliest document to propose a new college. It starts, "Dear Alton, the accompanying sheets carry some ideas for the future of journalism and communications on our campus. The report is longer than I planned, but it seemed to be necessary to clarify each major proposal with some supporting details." And yeah, the entire missive is pretty long. It's intended to merely skeletonize the new initiative, but really it reflects some ambitious plans. It details 5 specific areas of immediate development. 1, research in mass communication, including a research center in the history of Texas journalism. 2, development of news function, including taking the lead in adapting news concepts to changing cultural patterns. 3, a number of projects in magazine writing, editing, and production. 4, leadership in a study of industrial communication. And 5, a center for international journalism. Of interest to us is one of the parts where Reddick's thinking resonates with persistent concerns in curricular planning, one that still presents a challenge. How to balance general education and critical thinking with professionalization and the cultivation of skills. Reddick writes, "Within the professional courses, major emphasis should be placed on basic principles rather than techniques. The professional course, instead of being apart from the liberal arts experience of the student, should impinge heavily on that experience, bringing the pools of knowledge into which the student has dipped into focus around a professional or personal objective." Reddick put down on paper the idea of a college that would encompass speech, journalism, and radio and television. It would offer 3 undergraduate degrees, Bachelor of Science in Journalism, Radio, Television, and Film, and Speech, and a Master of Arts in Communication. But nothing much happened officially until May of 1962, when the president of the university, Joseph Smiley, asked the Committee on Educational Policy of the Faculty Council to study the matter and make recommendations. Smiley met with Reddick, Jesse Villarreal, chair of the speech department, and Robert Schenken from Radio Television to, quote, discuss what action might be taken towards setting up a separate school of communication. In July, a proposal for a school of communication was unanimously approved by both journalism and speech faculty in their respective academic units. So then what happened? In November of '62, Dr. Stephen Klabaugh, professor of geology and chair of the Committee on Educational Policy, filed a proposal for a school of communication with the secretary of the Faculty Council. The proposal called attention to the duality of educational character in journalism, radio, television, film, and speech. It said, while remaining essentially liberal arts, they have evolved significant professional aspects which set them apart from other departments now in the College of Arts and Sciences. On December 17th, the Faculty Council discussed the proposal. At the center of this discussion was the assessment of the degree to which the proposed change was primarily academic or administrative. Then, everyone went home for the holidays. They met again in February of 1963. In favor of the proposal, Klabaugh argued that in a national perspective, there really was no uniform pattern for establishing a college of communication, although similar initiatives had been taken at Michigan State, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, and elsewhere. Clabaugh stated that groupings created either by administrative dictate or by a domineering leader have tended to disintegrate, whereas those based on common interests and cooperative spirit have generally succeeded. In his view, this spirit was going strong in our corner of campus. There was a move to adopt the proposal, and the motion was approved. Here's a part that tickles me. Two guys were quite skeptical about the proposal. Lauren Winship, chair of the Department of Drama, and Roger Shattuck of Romance Languages. Neither of them was actually at the meeting on February 18th. So perhaps it's comforting that history repeats itself. And to make that history even longer, Winship's argument against a school of communication was that, quote, as a matter of fact, it would be difficult to find an academic department which does not offer courses that are essentially communicative in nature. This critique of communication and the value of teaching it to people is lifted straight out of an ancient page-turner titled The Gorgias by Plato, which centers on the question of what communication education is for. At any rate, all is well that ends well. In summer of 1963, the general faculty of the university and the Board of Regents approved the creation of a school of communication, and Reddick became the first director of it almost exactly 60 years ago, September of 1964. I'm taking this back with me.
But wait, there's more. So the era that we need to cover is the 1970s, but there are actually folks here who came to the department when it was the Department of Speech and Communication in the 1970s, and so they will regale you with the department and the college in the 70s and beyond.
A preview of what's next. I want to thank you both for kind of sharing that and putting that together, and also thank you for keeping the dirty laundry to past chairs. Folks, we're going to be reflecting more on the history and some of that related here to the department in panels that will be happening up on 5th floor here at 2:30 and at 3:45, and you're certainly invited to come back over here for those. But as someone else famous in history may or may not have said, let them eat cake. So let's go out and have our anniversary ice cream and cake, which will be out on the DMC lawn down on the 1st floor here. Thank you again for coming, and happy Quasquicentennial to all of us.